Some say the dead return through the eyes of strangers. The northern wind carried ash and memory through the valley of Greystone, where King Alaric ruled from a throne built on grief. 6 years had passed since he laid his mate beneath the frozen earth. 6 years since he swore never to feel again. His heart had become stone, his touch cold as the iron crown upon his brow. The kingdom whispered that their Alpha King had died the day his Luna did. Only his body remained, bound by duty and haunted by ghosts. The palace stood like a monument to loss. Every corridor held her shadow, every window framed the mountain where she fell. Alaric walked through rooms that once rang with her laughter, now silent as crypts. He ruled with precision, but without warmth, dispensing justice without mercy, leading his people with the efficiency of a machine whose gears had long forgotten what it meant to feel. Tonight, the moon hung full and merciless over the great hall where visiting packs gathered for the winter treaty. Alaric sat upon his throne, watching faces blur into insignificance, hearing voices that meant nothing. His advisors spoke of alliances and territory, but their words dissolved like snow on his tongue. He was present in body alone, a king carved from ice and duty. Then she entered. The hall fell silent as the delegation from the southern wastes approached. 3 alphas, 2 betas, and trailing behind them, barely visible, head bowed, dressed in worn gray, an omega who should have been invisible. But Alaric saw her, and his dead heart stuttered. She lifted her eyes for a single moment, pale green like spring leaves after rain, flecked with gold that caught the firelight. Eyes he had seen close in death, eyes he had kissed goodbye, eyes that haunted every dream and waking moment for 6 years. His Luna's eyes. The goblet in his hand cracked. Wine spilled across his fingers like blood, but he didn't move, couldn't move. The room spun, time fractured, and for a heartbeat he was back on that mountain watching her fall, reaching for her, screaming her name into the wind. "Your Majesty?" His beta, Marcus, leaned close. "Are you well?" Alaric forced breath into his lungs. "Who is she?" Marcus followed his gaze. "The Omega? She belongs to Alpha Gareth of the Waste Packs. A servant. I believe. Omega-born. Nothing of significance." Nothing of significance. The words burned like poison. She kept her head down as the delegation approached the throne. Alpha Gareth stepped forward, bowing with practiced deference, speaking words about borders and hunting rights. Alaric heard none of it. His entire being focused on the girl who stood 3 steps behind, trembling like a deer who sensed the wolf but couldn't run. "What is her name?" The question cut through Gareth's speech like a blade. The Alpha faltered, confused. "Your Majesty?" "The Omega. Her name." Gareth glanced back, irritation flashing across his features. "Ilara, Majesty. She's just Ilara." Alaric spoke the name like a prayer, like a curse. His Luna had been called Seraphina, but names meant nothing. Those eyes, he would know those eyes across lifetimes, across death itself. The girl, Ilara, finally looked up fully. Their gazes locked, and something ancient and undeniable passed between them. Recognition, not of faces or names, but of souls. She gasped softly, her hand flying to her chest as though struck, and in that moment Alaric saw it clearly. She felt it too. This impossible connection that defied logic and time. "The treaty is acceptable," Alaric said abruptly, standing. The hall rustled with surprise. He never made decisions this quickly. "You will remain as our guests for 3 days. Chambers will be prepared." He descended from the throne, each step bringing him closer to her. The crowd parted. Gareth looked pleased, oblivious to the tension crackling through the air like lightning before a storm. Alaric stopped before her. Up close he could see the differences. She was thinner than Seraphina had been, her hair darker, her features sharper from hardship. But those eyes, Luna help him. Those eyes were identical, and the scent, beneath the dirt and fear, beneath the suppressants she wore. He caught something that made his wolf rise for the first time in 6 years. "You will serve in the royal wing," he commanded, his voice rough. Ilara's eyes widened. "Your Majesty, It's an honor," Gareth interrupted, gripping her arm hard enough to bruise. "She accepts." Alaric's wolf snarled at the sight of another alpha's hand on her, at the flash of pain across her face. His fingers twitched toward the blade at his hip, ancient instinct roaring to protect, to claim, to... He turned sharply away. "Marcus will show you to your quarters. The Omega stays in the palace." He walked from the hall without looking back, but he felt her gaze on him like sunlight on skin that had known only winter. In his chambers, he stood before the portrait of Seraphina, beautiful, laughing, alive, and for the first time since her death, he felt something other than grief. Guilt. Because when he closed his eyes, the face he saw wasn't his dead mate's. It was Ilara's. Outside, the moon witnessed everything, silent as always, keeping secrets older than kingdoms. And in the valley below, a wolf howled, a sound of longing, of recognition, of destiny stirring after 6 years of sleep. The dead don't return. But sometimes the goddess offers a second chance wrapped in a stranger's eyes. The palace was a labyrinth of cold stone and colder stairs. Ilara followed the beta named Marcus through corridors that seemed to stretch into infinity, each one more magnificent and more suffocating than the last. Tapestries depicting battles and coronations lined the walls. Chandeliers dripped with crystal that caught the torchlight like frozen tears. Everything spoke of power, of permanence, of a world so far removed from her own that she felt like an intruder in a dream. "You're fortunate," Marcus said without looking back. "The king doesn't usually take interest in visiting servants." Fortunate. The word tasted bitter. She'd learned long ago that an alpha's interest in an omega was rarely a blessing. They stopped before an arched doorway. Marcus pushed it open to reveal a small chamber, servants' quarters, but cleaner and warmer than anywhere she'd slept in years. A narrow bed, a wash basin, a window that looked out over moonlit gardens. "You'll attend the king's chambers at dawn. He takes his meal before the council meets. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't touch anything. Don't..." He paused, studying her with sharp eyes. "Don't give him reason to regret this mercy." Mercy. Another word that meant something different in palace halls than it did in the waste packs. When Marcus left, Ilara sank onto the bed and let herself shake. Her arm still throbbed where Gareth had gripped her, his silent warning clear. "Behave, obey, make me look good before the king, or you'll pay for it when we return." But it wasn't Gareth's threat that kept her awake as the hours crept toward dawn. It was the king's eyes. She'd heard stories of King Alaric, the Frost King, they called him, the alpha who'd turned to ice when his mate died. A ruler who showed no mercy, felt no warmth, moved through the world like winter itself. The southern packs spoke his name with fear and respect in equal measure. No one had mentioned his eyes. Dark as midnight, deep as graves. But when they'd locked onto hers in that hall, she'd seen something flicker in their depths, something that looked like recognition, like grief, like a man seeing a ghost and wanting desperately to believe. And she'd felt it. Luna above, she'd felt it like a physical blow, the pull, the connection, the impossible sense that she knew him though they'd never met. Her wolf had stirred for the first time in years, pressing against the suppressants, whining softly as though calling to something lost. Madness. It was madness. She was nothing, an Omega-born orphan, passed from pack to pack, valued only for the labor her hands could provide. Gareth kept her because she was useful, because Omegas were rare enough to be valuable even when powerless. She'd learned to make herself small, quiet, invisible. But the king had seen her, and now she couldn't stop seeing him. tall and broad-shouldered, moving with a predator's grace, wearing grief like armor. His voice had been rough, as though unused to speech, and when he'd spoken her name. Ilara pressed her hands to her chest, feeling her heart race beneath her ribs. Dawn came too quickly. She washed with cold water, braided her hair with trembling fingers, smoothed her worn dress as best she could. The palace was waking around her. Footsteps in distant corridors, voices carrying through stone, the clang of kitchen pots and the bark of orders. A young maid appeared at her door. "The king is waiting." They walked through different corridors this time, climbing stairs that spiraled upward until Ilara's legs burned. The royal wing. She could feel it in the air itself, the weight of power, the scent of old magic and older bloodlines. The maid stopped before massive oak doors carved with wolves and moons. "Knock once. Enter when he calls. Place his tray on the table by the window. Don't stare. Don't linger." Then she fled, as though the very proximity to the king's chambers was dangerous. Ilara raised her hand, knocked once. "Enter." His voice sent shivers down her spine. She pushed the door open. The chamber was vast and sparse at once. High ceilings, stone walls hung with weapons rather than tapestries. A bed large enough for a king but made with military precision. A fireplace burned low, and by the window, silhouetted against the dawn, stood King Alaric. He wore simple clothes, black tunic and trousers, no crown, no royal regalia. But he didn't need them. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge. "Your meal, Majesty." Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Bring it here." She crossed the room on unsteady legs, acutely aware of his gaze tracking her every movement. The tray felt impossibly heavy. Bread, cheese, dried meat, wine. She set it on the table he'd indicated, careful not to let anything rattle. "Look at me." It wasn't a request. Ilara lifted her eyes slowly, prepared for anything, anger, lust, cruelty. What she found instead stopped her breath. Pain, raw and ancient, carved into every line of his face. "Who are you?" he asked softly. I don't understand, Majesty." "Your eyes." He took a step closer, then another. "Where did you get those eyes?" "I was born with them." The words tumbled out. "I'm sorry if they displease—" "They don't displease me." His voice cracked like ice. "They haunt me." He was close now, close enough that she could smell pine and smoke and something wilder, wolf and moonlight and winter storms. Close enough that she could see the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples, the scar that ran along his jaw, the shadows beneath his eyes that spoke of years without rest. "You look like someone I lost," he whispered. "Someone I buried. Someone I've mourned every day for 6 years. Tears pricked Ilara's eyes without permission. "I'm sorry for your loss. Are you?" He studied her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. "Or are you her? Returned to torment me? Sent by the goddess to test whether a broken man can break further? I'm no one, Majesty. Just an omega from don't." The command was gentle but absolute. "Don't call yourself no one. Not here, not to me. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments of the night they find you. The days that followed were a dance of proximity and distance, of words unspoken and gazes held too long. Ilara served the king his meals, tended his chambers, performed the duties assigned to her with quiet efficiency. But the work itself was merely pretense. They both knew it. What truly happened in those morning hours was something far more dangerous. They talked. At first it was nothing. Small observations about the weather, the gardens, the ravens that nested in the palace towers. Safe topics, careful words. But gradually, like ice thawing under persistent sun, The conversations deepened. "Why did you join the waste packs?" Alaric asked one morning, standing by the window as she cleared his breakfast. Alara paused. No one had ever asked about her past. Omegas didn't have stories worth hearing. "I didn't join them, Majesty. They took me in when my birth pack dissolved. I was 12, alone." "And Gareth treats you well?" The question was casual, but his posture had changed, shoulders tense, hands curled into fists. "He treats me as Omegas are treated. That's not an answer." She met his eyes then, let him see the truth she usually hid. "No Alpha treats an Omega well, Majesty. They tolerate us when useful, discard us when we're not." Something dark and furious flickered across his face. "I would never—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "My mate was an Omega." The confession hung between them like sacred ground. "Tell me about her," Alara said softly. "If it doesn't pain you too much." Alaric turned back to the window. Beyond the glass, snow had begun to fall, the first of the season, soft and silent. Seraphina was. He searched for words. Light. When I became king at 23 after my father's death, the crown felt like a mountain I couldn't carry. But she made it bearable. She had your eyes, exactly your eyes, and your voice, that same gentleness. She believed I could be more than duty and war. She believed I could be good. You loved her very much. I love her still." He glanced back at Alara, and the raw honesty in his gaze made her heart clench. "Love doesn't die just because the beloved does. It stays, like a wound that never heals." "How did she—" Alara trailed off, realizing the rudeness of the question, but Alaric answered anyway. "An ambush. We were traveling to the northern border, just the two of us and a small guard. We thought ourselves safe in our own territory. We were fools." His voice went hollow. "They came from the cliffs, rebels who thought killing the king's mate would destabilize the realm. They were right. It did. And you've ruled alone since." "I've existed since. Ruling requires a heart. Mine was buried with her." Alara set down the tray and did something she'd never dared with any Alpha. She crossed to where he stood, stopping an arm's length away. "Majesty," she said quietly, "may I speak freely?" He nodded, not trusting his voice. "Your mate sounds like she was extraordinary. But if she loved you as you say, do you truly believe she'd want you to spend your life as a ghost? To punish yourself with loneliness?" Alaric's laugh was bitter. "You sound like her. She was always too wise, too kind. She'd have forgiven me for failing to protect her." "Then why can't you forgive yourself?" The question struck like an arrow to the heart. He turned to face her fully, and suddenly the distance between them felt both too much and not enough. "Because every time I close my eyes, I see her falling. Every time I sleep, I hear her scream. Every day I wake and remember I couldn't save her, that I failed the one person who mattered most. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? I'm the Alpha King. I command armies. I've defeated every enemy who's challenged my rule, but I couldn't save one Omega from a cliff's edge." Tears streamed down his face now, the first he'd shed in 6 years. The dam had broken. Alara did something instinctive, something that transcended rank and reason. She stepped forward and took his hand. The contact was electric. Alaric gasped, and so did she. The bond, it snapped into place like a key turning in a lock, like a constellation aligning after centuries of chaos. Not the full mate bond, not yet, but its precursor. The recognition that some souls are meant to find each other across lifetimes. "No," Alaric whispered, pulling back. "This can't! You can't!" But his wolf was howling in recognition, pressing against his ribs, demanding he accept what the goddess herself had offered. Alara felt it too, the pull, the rightness, the terrifying certainty that this broken king and this powerless Omega were meant to collide. Her suppressants screamed in protest as her wolf woke fully for the first time, stretching like a creature emerging from a long sleep. "Majesty, you need to leave." His voice shook. "Now, before I do something unforgivable." What would be unforgivable? He looked at her with eyes full of storms, hoping, believing the goddess would be cruel enough to give me a second chance when I don't deserve one. Ilara's heart shattered and soared at once. Maybe it's not about deserving. Maybe it's about accepting what's offered, even when it terrifies us. A knock at the door broke the moment like glass. "Your Majesty," Marcus called. "The council is waiting." Alaric straightened, and just like that, the king returned, composed, cold, unreachable. "Go, attend your other duties. We won't speak of this." But as Ilara left the chamber, she felt his gaze burning into her back, and she knew, as surely as she knew her own name, that everything had changed. In the gardens below, the first snow continued to fall, covering the world in white. And in the palace, two souls circled each other like celestial bodies, caught in a gravity neither could resist. The dead don't return. But perhaps the goddess offers second chances to those brave enough to seize them. The revelation came 3 nights later, under a moon so full it seemed close enough to touch. Ilara woke to screaming. Not her own. The palace itself seemed to shriek, stone walls vibrating with a sound that was both heard and felt. She stumbled from her bed, heart pounding, and ran into the corridor where other servants huddled in confusion and fear. "What's happening?" "The king—" "It's the curse. Everyone to the lower halls." But Ilara didn't run to safety. Her feet carried her upward, toward the royal wing, toward the source of the sound. Guards tried to stop her, but she dodged them, driven by an instinct stronger than self-preservation. She had to reach him. The doors to Alaric's chambers hung open, torn from their hinges. Inside, chaos, furniture overturned, tapestries shredded, and in the center of the destruction, a massive black wolf thrashing against silver chains that Marcus and 2 other betas struggled to hold. "The tranquilizers aren't working. We need more chains." The wolf's eyes, Alaric's eyes, were wild with pain and madness. His fur stood on end, electricity crackling through the air around him. This wasn't a normal shift. This was something darker, something wrong. "What's wrong with him?" Ilara demanded. Marcus looked up, shock and anger warring on his face. "You shouldn't be here. What is wrong with him?" "The curse," Marcus spat. "Every full moon since the queen died, this happens." His wolf tries to tear free, searching for her. "Normally we can sedate him, but tonight—" The wolf roared, snapping the chains. The betas flew backward. In seconds, the beast would be loose, would tear through the palace in its grief-maddened state. Ilara moved without thinking. She stepped between the wolf and the guards, hands raised, voice steady despite her terror. "Alaric, it's me. Look at me." The wolf's gaze locked onto her, pupils blown wide, fangs bared. Death stood before her in black fur and moonlight. "I'm not her," Ilara said softly. "I'm not Seraphina, but I'm here. I'm real, and I need you to come back." The wolf lunged. Ilara didn't flinch, and something impossible happened. Light erupted from her hands, silver and gold, bright as dawn breaking over mountains. It wrapped around the wolf like gentle chains, not binding but soothing, not forcing but inviting. The beast stumbled, confusion replacing rage. Ilara gasped as power flooded through her, ancient, feminine, undeniable. Her omega nature, yes, but something more. Something the suppressants had hidden for years. She was a pathfinder. The rarest of gifts among omegas, the ability to call lost wolves home, to guide spirits back from the edge of madness, to be the light in someone else's darkness. "Come back to me," she whispered, and it wasn't a plea, but a command woven with love. "Come back, Alaric. Your mate is gone, but you're still needed here. Your pack needs you. Your kingdom needs you. A pause. Then, softer. I need you. The wolf shuddered. The light intensified, warm as summer sun, gentle as morning rain. And slowly, so slowly, fur became skin, fangs became teeth, beast became man. Alaric collapsed into her arms, naked and shaking, sweat-soaked and disoriented. Alara held him, this powerful king reduced to trembling vulnerability, and felt the full weight of her gift settle into her bones. She was meant for this, for him. How? Marcus breathed, staring at her with something between awe and fear. How did you do that? I don't know, Alara lied, because the truth was too vast and terrifying to speak aloud. But Alaric knew. He looked up at her with clear eyes, recognition and wonder mingling in their depths. You're a pathfinder, he rasped. I thought they were myths. So did I. He touched her face with shaking fingers, tracing the line of her jaw as though memorizing it. The goddess truly is cruel. To give me your face, your eyes, your gift, to offer me everything I've been dying for, and make you belong to another alpha. The words hung between them like a confession. I don't belong to Gareth, Alara whispered. I never have. He owns my service, but not my soul. Then who do you belong to? The question was dangerous, forbidden. A king and an unmated Omega, a bond forming without permission or protocol, everything they'd been taught to avoid. Alara should have said no one, should have pulled away, should have remembered her place. Instead, she said, I think I've always belonged to you. Alaric surged up and kissed her. It was desperate and tender at once. 6 years of grief and loneliness pouring into contact, 2 starving souls finally feeding. His hands buried in her hair, hers clutched at his shoulders, and between them the mate bond blazed into full life, not replacing what he'd had with Seraphina, but offering something new, something equally sacred, a second chance at love. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back in. Marcus and the guards stood frozen, witnesses to something that would change everything. This is forbidden, Marcus said, but his voice held more sadness than judgment. She's not free to claim. Gareth will never— I don't care what Gareth will or won't do. Alaric stood, wrapping a cloak around himself. Every inch the king despite his disheveled state. She saved my life tonight. She pulled me back from madness. That debt supersedes any other claim. He'll challenge you. Let him. Alaric's voice was cold steel. I've avoided conflict for 6 years because I was too broken to care who ruled what territory. But if any alpha thinks he can keep my mate from me, he'll learn very quickly that the Frost King still has teeth. Alara's heart soared and fractured at once. Majesty, Alaric, this will start a war. He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. Then let it start. I've been dead for 6 years. You brought me back to life. If I have to burn the world to keep you, I will. That's not what she'd want, Alara said gently, meaning Seraphina. Your first mate wouldn't want you to become a monster in her memory. Alaric's expression softened. No, she wouldn't. She'd tell me to be smart, be strategic, be the king she believed I could be. He took Alara's hands in his. Then that's what I'll do. I'll challenge Gareth legally, within pack law. I'll offer him compensation for breaking his claim. And if he refuses? His eyes hardened. Then I'll do what kings do. I'll take what's mine. Marcus cleared his throat. The delegation leaves at dawn. You have hours to decide. I've decided. Alaric turned to his beta, and for the first time in years, Marcus saw true purpose in his king's eyes. Summon the council, wake the Alpha of Laws, and bring Gareth to the throne room. We settle this tonight. As guards scattered to obey, Alaric pulled Alara close once more. "Are you sure?" she whispered against his chest. "I'm worth this trouble?" He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You're worth everything, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it." Outside, the full moon watched, bearing witness as it had for countless generations. And in the palace, a curse broke and a bond formed, and the dead made peace so the living could love again. Subscribe if you believe mercy can crown even the fallen. The throne room filled with tension, thick enough to choke on. Dawn was still hours away, but every council member had been roused from sleep, every witness required by pack law assembled. Torches burned in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows on stone walls that had seen centuries of judgments. At the room's center stood King Alaric, regal in formal robes despite the hour, crown upon his brow, every inch the sovereign. To his right, Alara stood, no longer in servant's gray, but dressed in a simple gown of deep blue that Marcus had procured. She'd refused to hide, refused to cower. If her fate was to be decided tonight, she would face it standing tall. To the left, Alpha Gareth paced like a caged predator, fury radiating from every movement. He'd been given the barest explanation. The king wished to discuss a matter of claim. But Gareth wasn't stupid. One look at Alara standing beside Alaric told him everything. "This is unprecedented," Gareth snarled as the doors sealed shut. "You call me here in the dead of night to, what, steal my property?" "Careful," Alaric's voice was soft but deadly. "You refer to a Pathfinder Omega as property. In ancient law, such beings are considered sacred, beyond any Alpha's claim." Gareth's eyes widened. "You're lying. Pathfinders are myths. I witnessed her gift myself." Marcus stepped forward, and beside him, 2 other guards nodded confirmation. "She called the king back from a curse madness that should have destroyed him. Her power is genuine." The room erupted in whispers. Even the counselors, ancient wolves who'd thought they'd seen everything, looked shaken. Pathfinders appeared perhaps once in a generation, if that. To have one hidden among the waste packs, suppressed and unrecognized. "Even so," Gareth recovered quickly, "she came to your kingdom as part of my delegation. She's been under my care for 8 years. You can't simply—" "I can." Alaric descended from the throne, moving with predatory grace. "Pack law is clear. When a true mate bond forms, it supersedes all previous claims. The Omega has the right to choose. She's not your mate. Your mate is dead." The words hung like poison in the air. Alaric didn't flinch. "My first mate is dead, yes, but the goddess in her wisdom has granted me a second bond. I don't pretend to understand it. I don't claim to deserve it, but I feel it." He placed a hand over his heart. "Here, as clearly as I felt Seraphina. And if you're alpha enough, you'll feel it too. The bond between Alara and me is real." Gareth looked at Alara, really looked at her for the first time, saw the way she angled toward Alaric like a flower to the sun, the way their breathing had synchronized, the subtle glow that surrounded them both, the unmistakable sign of a forming mate bond. His face twisted with rage and something else, calculation. "Then compensate me." Gareth's voice turned cold and businesslike. "You're a king. You have resources I could never dream of. Pay me what she's worth, and I'll dissolve my claim." "Name your price." 3 territories along the southern border, the mining rights to the Iron Mountains, and a seat on your council. The room gasped. It was an outrageous demand. Wealth and power that would elevate the waste packs to major players in the kingdom. "Done," Alaric said without hesitation. Gareth blinked. "What?" "Done. You'll have the treaties drawn up by week's end. The territories, the mining rights, the council seat, all yours. In exchange, you dissolve any claim on Alara and swear before these witnesses never to pursue her again." "Majesty," one of the counselors protested, "that's half the southern region." I don't care if it's the entire kingdom. Alaric's voice rang with absolute authority. She's worth more than land, more than gold, more than anything you could name. Alara's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever valued her. No one had ever fought for her. And now a king was offering up his kingdom without a second thought. But Gareth wasn't finished. There's one more condition. His smile turned cruel. I want to know why. Why does she deserve this? What makes a worthless Omega worth bankrupting your southern defenses? You want to know why. Alaric moved until he stood directly before Gareth, two alphas separated by inches and an ocean of rank. Because 6 years ago, I failed to protect the woman I loved. I've carried that failure like chains ever since. And when the goddess gave me a second chance, when she brought me someone who could pull me back from darkness, who could make me want to live again, I swore I wouldn't fail a second time. He turned to Alara, and his voice gentled. She's worth it because she saw a broken king and offered kindness instead of fear. Because she has a gift that could serve any pack, yet she chooses to serve mine. Because when I look at her, I don't see my dead mate returned. I see someone entirely new. Someone brave and gentle and impossibly strong, and I love her, not because she has Seraphina's eyes, but because she has her own heart. Silence. Then Alara spoke, her voice steady despite her tears. And I love him. Not because he's a king, not because he can offer me protection or power, but because beneath the crown and the grief, I see a man who's capable of such profound love that he's spent 6 years mourning. A man who breaks and still stands. A man who's worth saving, even if he doesn't believe it himself. She walked to Alaric, took his hand, and faced Gareth with her head high. I choose him, not because you're releasing your claim, but because he's my true mate. And if you'd forced me back to the waste packs, I'd have run away the first chance I got. You'd have lost me anyway. This way, at least you profit from it. Gareth stared at them both, and something in his expression shifted. Defeat, perhaps, or maybe, just maybe, a grudging respect. Fine. He spat the word. Draw up your treaties, I'll sign them. But know this, King Alaric, you've made a powerful friend today. But you've also shown every alpha in the realm that you'll empty your coffers for an Omega. They'll see it as weakness. Let them. Alaric's smile was cold and dangerous. Let every alpha who thinks me weak come test that theory. They'll learn what my enemies learned before Seraphina died, that the Frost King earned his crown in blood, and I've simply been too grief-stricken to remind them. The threat hung in the air like a blade. We're done here, Gareth said finally. I leave at dawn. Have the papers ready. As he stalked from the throne room, the tension broke like a storm passing. Counselors began talking at once, some protesting the cost, others marveling at the drama, all trying to process what they'd witnessed. But Alaric heard none of it. He pulled Alara into his arms, holding her as though she might vanish if he loosened his grip. You're mine now, he whispered into her hair. Truly mine. No claims, no contracts, just the bond the goddess forged. And you're mine, Alara whispered back. My broken king, my second chance, our second chance. They stood there as dawn began to break beyond the windows. Two souls who'd been shattered and were now being remade, and around them the kingdom stirred with the knowledge that their Frost King had finally thawed. In the southern mountains, Gareth's delegation prepared to depart, and the Alpha himself looked back at the palace one last time. He'd lost an Omega, but gained an empire. Not a bad trade. Though he suspected, watching the way the king and his new mate moved together like twin stars, that he'd actually lost something priceless. Some bonds transcend politics. Some loves are worth kingdoms. The coronation came 2 months later, when winter had locked the kingdom in ice and beauty. Alara stood in the royal chambers, barely recognizing her reflection. The dress was silver and white, embroidered with wolves and moons in thread that shimmered like starlight. Her hair fell in waves down her back, woven through with flowers that somehow bloomed despite the cold. She looked like a queen. She felt like an imposter. "You're trembling," Alaric said softly from the doorway. Alara turned to find him watching her with such tenderness it made her chest ache. 2 months had passed since that fateful night in the throne room, 2 months of getting to know each other without the weight of uncertainty. They'd walked in gardens, talked through countless dinners, stolen kisses in corridors like young lovers, though they were both marked by life's hardships. And through it all, the bond had grown stronger, a living thing, warm and golden, connecting them in ways that went beyond words. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Your people don't know me. They loved Serafina. They'll think I'm trying to replace her." "No one could replace her." Alaric crossed the room, taking her hands in his. "But that's not what this is. You're not Serafina returned. You're Alara, the Pathfinder who saved their king, the Omega who brought light back to this palace. They don't need you to be her. They need you to be you." "What if I fail? Then we fail together." He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. "That's what mates do. We stand together through triumph and disaster. And Alara, I'd rather fail with you beside me than succeed alone." A knock at the door. Marcus entered, looking uncomfortable in formal robes. "It's time, Your Majesties." The title sent a thrill through Alara and a spike of fear. They walked through the palace together, hand in hand, following a path lined with guards in ceremonial armor. Behind them, the council processed in order of rank. Ahead, the great doors to the throne room stood open, revealing what lay beyond. The entire kingdom, it seemed. Wolves from every pack, every territory, every corner of the realm had come to witness their Frost King take a new mate. The throne room overflowed into corridors, into courtyards, into the streets beyond. Thousands of faces, thousands of eyes, all focused on the Omega who'd captured their king's heart. Alara's steps faltered. Alaric squeezed her hand. "Breathe. I'm with you." They entered together. The crowd fell silent as they approached the throne. The Alpha of Laws stood waiting, ancient and solemn, holding a crown that caught the light from 100 candles. Beside him, a priestess of the goddess, white-robed and silver-haired, held a chalice of blessed wine. Alaric led Alara to the center of the dais and turned to face the assembly. "6 years ago," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast room, "I lost my mate, my queen, my light. I thought that loss would destroy me. In many ways, it did. I became a king of ice and duty, ruling without warmth, existing without living." He paused, looking down at Alara with such love it made her heart stop. But the goddess is wiser than we are. She knew that grief, while sacred, shouldn't become a prison. She knew that love can strike twice in one lifetime, different but equally true. And so she sent me a gift, an Omega with the power to call lost souls home. A woman who saw my brokenness and didn't fear it, who offered kindness when I deserved none. He took her other hand, holding both now, anchoring her. "Alara is not a replacement for what I lost. She's a beginning of what I might become. And today I ask you, my people, my pack, my kingdom, to accept her as your queen. Not because she wears a crown, but because she's earned it through courage and grace." The silence stretched. Alara could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of thousands of gazes. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, an old woman's voice. "The Pathfinder who saved our king?" "Yes," Alaric confirmed. "Then she has my blessing." The woman stepped forward, ancient, bent with age, but eyes sharp as steel. "I was Luna to King Alaric's grandfather. I know something about second chances and unlikely queens. If the goddess sent her, we'd be fools to refuse." One by one, others stepped forward. Alara recognized Marcus, the guards who'd witnessed her gift, even some of the counselors who'd protested Alaric's generosity. She has my loyalty, and mine, the Pathfinder Queen. The whisper spread like wildfire through the crowd. Not rejection, acceptance, gradual, cautious, but real. The priestess raised the chalice. Do you, Alara, formerly of the Waste Packs, accept the crown and burden of queen? Will you stand beside King Alaric as his mate, his partner, his equal? Will you serve this pack with your gifts, guide the lost home, and honor the goddess who blessed this union? Alara's voice came out clear and strong. I will. And do you, Alaric, king of the Northern Realm, take this Omega as your mate and queen? Will you honor the gift of a second bond while never forgetting the first? Will you protect and cherish her as the goddess commands? I will. Alaric's eyes never left Alara's face. With everything I am. The priestess blessed the wine and offered it first to Alaric, then to Alara. They drank, the ancient ritual binding them not just as mates, but as leaders. Then the Alpha of Laws stepped forward with the crown, smaller than Alaric's, but no less magnificent. Silver worked to look like moonlight, set with stones that glowed soft and white. By the power vested in me by pack law and the blessing of the goddess, he intoned, I crown you, Alara, Queen of the Northern Realm, Luna to the Wolf King, Pathfinder and Lightbringer. He placed the crown on her head. The weight of it was considerable, not just the metal, but the responsibility it represented. Alara felt tears slip down her cheeks as she realized what had just happened. She was a queen, no longer invisible, no longer worthless, no longer alone. Alaric pulled her into his arms and kissed her before the entire assembly, and the throne room erupted in cheers and howls. The sound was deafening, joyful, and impossibly moving. When they finally broke apart, both smiling through tears, Alaric whispered in her ear, Still terrified? Absolutely, Alara whispered back, but I think that's okay. It's more than okay. He kissed her again, softer this time. It means you understand the weight, and I'll carry it with you every single day. The celebration lasted until dawn, but eventually they retreated to their chambers, now truly theirs, shared and sacred. Alone at last. Crowns set aside, they stood by the window, watching snow fall over their kingdom. Do you think she'd approve? Alara asked quietly, meaning Seraphina. Your first mate, would she be happy for you? Alaric considered the question seriously. Yes. She always said I loved too deeply, grieved too hard. She'd want me to live again, to be happy. And I think... His voice caught. I think she'd like you. You're different from her in 1,000 ways, but you both share the same strength, the same kindness. I'll never try to erase her memory. I know. That's one reason I love you. He turned to her, cupping her face. You understand that my heart is big enough for both, that loving you doesn't diminish what I felt for her. You're not threatened by a ghost. How could I be? Alara smiled through tears. She shaped the man I love. Without her, you wouldn't be who you are. They made love slowly, tenderly, the mate bond blazing between them like sunlight. And afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, they spoke of the future, the children they might have, the kingdom they would build, the life they'd create from the ashes of loss. Outside, the moon watched as it always did, bearing witness to another chapter in an ancient story. Love doesn't end with death. It transforms, evolves, and sometimes, if you're very fortunate, it blooms again in unexpected places. Comment Luna if you'd walk through the storm for someone who saw your worth. Spring came like a resurrection, melting the ice that had locked the kingdom for months. Alara stood in the palace gardens, watching new growth push through soil that had seemed dead. 5 months had passed since her coronation. 5 months of learning what it meant to be queen. The role still felt too large some days, like wearing a dress tailored for someone else. But Alaric was always there, steady as stone, reminding her that she was exactly where she belonged. Today, though, she needed solitude to process what she'd learned. She was carrying his child. The palace healer had confirmed it that morning, 6 weeks along, healthy and strong. An heir, the future of the kingdom growing beneath her heart, and she hadn't yet found the words to tell him. "You're brooding," came a familiar voice. Ilara turned to find Marcus approaching, looking uncomfortable as always when dealing with emotional matters. In the months since she'd become queen, the beta had become something unexpected, a friend. "Just thinking. About what the gossips are saying," he grimaced. "I can have them silenced." "What gossips?" Marcus looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Some of the older pack members. They're saying you can't possibly fill Serafina's shoes, that you're too young, too inexperienced, that the king chose you out of grief rather than wisdom." The words stung, but Ilara had heard worse. "They're not wrong about the inexperience. They're wrong about everything else." Marcus moved to stand beside her, both of them looking out over the gardens. "I loved Serafina. She was kind to me when I was just a young guard, promoted me based on merit rather than bloodline. When she died, I thought the king would never recover." He turned to look at Ilara. "But you brought him back to life. Not because you look like her, you don't really, except for the eyes, but because you're strong in ways she wasn't. You survived things she never had to face, and that strength is exactly what he needs, what the kingdom needs." Tears pricked Ilara's eyes. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep being exactly who you are." He paused. "And whatever you're hiding, because you're definitely hiding something, tell the king. He deserves to know." After Marcus left, Ilara stayed in the gardens until she felt ready. Then she returned to the palace, seeking Alaric in the places she'd learned he frequented. Not the throne room, where duty demanded his presence, but the library, his sanctuary. She found him there, surrounded by books and maps, planning something that involved the Eastern Territories. He looked up when she entered, and his entire face transformed, the hard edges softening, warmth flooding eyes that could be so cold. "I was about to send search parties," he teased, rising to meet her. "You've been avoiding me all day." "Not avoiding, thinking." "About what?" He pulled her into his arms, and she melted against him, breathing in his scent, pine and smoke and home. "About how to tell you something important." His body tensed. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." She pulled back to look at him, saw the fear flickering in his eyes, always there, just beneath the surface, the terror that he'd lose another mate. "It's good news, I think. I hope you'll think so." "Ilara, you're scaring me." She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "I'm pregnant. 6 weeks. The healer says everything looks healthy." Silence. Alaric's face went through a dozen emotions in seconds. Shock, disbelief, fear, and finally, pure incandescent joy. His eyes filled with tears as his hand spread wider, as though trying to feel the tiny life within. "You're sure?" "Completely sure." He dropped to his knees before her, pressing his forehead against her stomach, shoulders shaking. Ilara ran her fingers through his hair, giving him time to process. When he finally spoke, his voice was wrecked. "Serafina and I tried for 3 years. We wanted children desperately. It never happened. The healers said it was stress, that my body was too focused on kingship to create new life. And after she died, I never thought, I never imagined. But here we are," Ilara whispered, "creating something new, building a future." Alaric looked up at her, face wet with tears, but smiling wider than she'd ever seen. "You're giving me everything, a reason to live, love I thought I'd never feel again. and now a child. He stood abruptly, lifting her and spinning her in a circle, laughing like a man half his age. When he set her down, he kissed her with such tenderness it made her weak. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I love you so much it terrifies me, and I swear on everything sacred I will protect you both. Nothing will happen to you, not like—" "I know." She cupped his face. "I know you're scared. But we can't live in fear of what might happen. We have to trust the goddess, trust each other, and believe that this time the story will be different." "Different," he repeated like a prayer. "Yes, different. Better." They spent the evening making plans, choosing names, imagining what the child might be like, discussing how to announce it to the kingdom. But beneath the joy, Elara felt Alaric's fear like a living thing. Every time she moved too quickly, he tensed. Every time she mentioned feeling tired, he wanted to summon the healer. Finally, as they lay in bed that night, she addressed it directly. "You can't protect me from everything. You know that, right?" Alaric stared at the ceiling. "I can try. And you'll drive yourself mad in the process. Drive me mad, too." She rolled onto her side to face him. "I need you to trust that I'm stronger than I look. That I survived 8 years with the waste packs, survived being nobody and nothing. And I can survive being a queen and a mother. It's not your strength, I doubt." His voice was barely a whisper. "It's fate, the goddess, the universe, whatever you want to call it. I've learned that life can steal everything in a heartbeat. And the thought of losing you—" His breath hitched. "It would end me, completely. Then we face that fear together." Elara took his hand, intertwining their fingers. "We don't let it control us, but we acknowledge it. And we do everything in our power to write a different ending." "A different ending," he repeated. "I want to believe that's possible." "It is possible. We're proof. 2 broken people who found each other and built something whole. If we can do that, we can do anything." Alaric pulled her close, and they lay there in the darkness, feeling the tiny spark of new life between them. Outside, spring continued its work of transformation, proving that even the deadest winter eventually yields to warmth. And in the palace, a king who'd been frozen in grief learned to hope again. Carefully, painfully, but undeniably. The assassin came in late summer, when the kingdom had grown complacent with peace. Elara was 7 months along, round with child, and radiating the glow that pregnant omegas carried. She'd taken to walking the palace grounds each evening, Alaric beside her when duties allowed, guards trailing at a respectful distance when he couldn't be there. Tonight, he was in council. Marcus walked 3 paces behind, alert but not alarmed. They'd had no threats in months. The kingdom had settled into prosperity. Even the old gossips had quieted, won over by Elara's genuine care for the people and her growing confidence in her role. They were passing through the rose garden when Elara felt it, a wrongness in the air, a prickling at the base of her skull that made her wolf rise in warning. "Marcus." She didn't finish the sentence before the attack came. A figure in black dropped from the wall, blade flashing silver in the moonlight. Marcus reacted instantly, shoving Elara behind him, meeting the assassin with his own sword. Metal rang against metal, sparks flying. More guards converged from all directions, but the assassin was skilled, moving like water, striking like lightning. Marcus took a blade to the shoulder and went down. The assassin turned toward Elara. She should have run, should have screamed, should have done anything except what she did. She stood her ground, hands rising instinctively, and called on her gift. Light exploded from her palms, silver and gold, bright as the sun at noon. It struck the assassin like a physical blow, sending the figure flying backward into the garden wall. The impact cracked stone. But Elara felt something else, a tearing sensation deep inside, a wrongness that made her gasp and clutch her stomach. "No," she whispered as pain lanced through her. "No, please!" The assassin struggled to rise, but more guards had arrived, overwhelming the attacker. Someone was shouting for the king, for the healer, for help. Ilara's legs gave out. She collapsed into the roses, thorns catching at her dress, and felt wetness between her thighs. Blood or fluid, she couldn't tell, but it was too early. The baby wasn't due for 2 more months. "Ilara!" Alaric's voice, raw with terror. Then his arms around her, lifting her, carrying her at a run through corridors that blurred together. "Stay with me," he commanded, and she heard the alpha power in it, the desperate need to make reality bend to his will. "Stay with me, both of you. That's an order." The healer's chambers, bright lights, hands examining her, voices speaking in urgent, clipped tones. "The baby's coming! Too early. We need to stop the labor." But it was too late. The baby was coming whether ready or not. And all the power and wealth in the kingdom couldn't change that. Ilara screamed as contractions tore through her. Alaric held her hand, speaking constantly, reassurances, prayers, threats against the goddess herself if she took this from him again. His face was bone white, eyes wild with the terror she'd feared since she'd first told him about the pregnancy. He was reliving his worst nightmare. "I can't lose you," he said over and over. "I can't do this again. Please, please stay." "I'm trying," Ilara gasped between contractions. "I'm fighting." Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning in that room where life and death warred. And finally, after an eternity of pain and fear and desperate hope, a cry pierced the air, thin and reedy, but undeniably alive. "A girl," the healer announced, wrapping the tiny infant in soft cloth. Small, but strong. Her lungs work, her heart beats. Against all odds, she lives. They placed the baby in Ilara's arms, and she looked down at the impossibly tiny creature, pink and wrinkled and perfect. Dark hair, eyes that would probably turn the same green gold as her own, and a surprisingly strong grip as miniature fingers wrapped around Ilara's thumb. "She's beautiful," Ilara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Our daughter." Alaric stared at the baby as though seeing a miracle. His hands shook as he reached out to touch the small head, barely bigger than his palm. "She's alive," he said, disbelief and joy mingling. "You're both alive." "We're both alive," Ilara confirmed. "Different ending, remember? We wrote a different story." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, careful of the baby between them. "What should we name her?" Ilara had thought about this for months, considered dozens of options. But looking at this tiny miracle, she knew there was only one name that felt right. "Serafina," Ilara said softly, meeting Alaric's eyes. "If that's okay with you, not to replace her, but to honor her, to acknowledge that she was part of what brought us together, that her memory helped shape the man you became." Alaric's composure shattered completely. He buried his face against Ilara's shoulder, sobbing with a grief and joy so intertwined they were indistinguishable. "Yes," he managed, "Serafina. It's perfect." The healer cleared her throat gently. "Your Majesties, both mother and child need rest. The birth was premature. They'll need careful monitoring for the next few weeks. But the signs are good. Very good." As the medical staff bustled about, preparing a recovery space, Marcus appeared in the doorway, arm bandaged, face pale but determined. "The assassin," Alaric's voice went cold as winter. "Alive. Captured. We're holding them in the dungeons." Marcus's expression was grim. "You'll want to question them yourself. Not tonight." Alaric looked at Ilara and their daughter, and something shifted in his face. A final letting go of the past, a full embrace of the present. "Tonight, I'm exactly where I need to be. The assassin can wait until morning." Marcus nodded and withdrew. As night deepened into early morning, Ilara drifted in and out of sleep, exhausted but peaceful. Each time she woke, Alaric was there, watching over them, one hand on hers, the other gently touching their daughter's tiny fingers. "I was so scared," he admitted during one of her waking moments. "When I saw you in the garden, bleeding, it was happening again. History repeating. Fate taking everything." "But it didn't," Ilara whispered. "We fought. We survived. We won. You won. Your strength, your gift. You saved yourself. Saved our daughter." He kissed her hand. "I've spent 6 years thinking I needed to protect everyone around me. That love meant preventing all harm. But you've taught me something different. Love isn't about shielding someone from every danger. It's about trusting them to be strong, standing beside them, not in front of them." "We protect each other," Ilara said. "That's what mates do." Little Serafina stirred between them, making tiny sounds that were somewhere between squeaks and sighs. Both parents froze, entranced by every movement, every breath. "She's so small," Alaric marveled. "She'll grow, and we'll teach her to be strong, like her father, kind-like." Ilara paused. "Like both her namesakes, the queen who came before and the mother who's here now." "And fierce like her mother," Alaric added. "The Omega who took on an assassin while 7 months pregnant and won." Ilara managed a tired laugh. "Probably not my smartest decision." "Probably not, but it worked." His expression sobered. "We'll need to investigate who sent that assassin. Why now? Why target you?" "Tomorrow," Ilara insisted. "Tonight we just exist as a family. The kingdom and its dangers can wait a few hours." So they did. As dawn painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, the new family stayed cocooned in their small corner of the world. Outside, guards doubled their patrols. The council would convene to discuss security. The assassin would be questioned and judged. But in that moment, in that room, there was only peace and love and the miracle of a second chance given flesh and breath. 3 years passed, like a dream made solid. Little Serafina grew into a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn determination. She ran through palace halls with a toy sword, declaring herself warrior princess and recruiting guards into elaborate games. She demanded bedtime stories about wolves and moons and brave omegas, and she had both her parents wrapped around her tiny fingers. The kingdom prospered under Alaric and Ilara's joint rule, his strength and her compassion creating a balance that brought peace to territories that had known only conflict. The Pathfinder Queen, they called her now, and the title was spoken with genuine affection rather than skepticism. But tonight, as Ilara stood on the balcony overlooking the kingdom, she found herself thinking about the journey that had brought her here. The assassin, it turned out, had been sent by a rival alpha, someone who'd hoped to destabilize Alaric's rule by killing his new mate. The plot had failed spectacularly, resulting in new alliances and stronger borders. The would-be murderer now worked in the palace gardens, his life spared but his freedom forfeit. A living reminder that mercy could be its own form of justice. Gareth had become an unexpected friend, visiting twice a year with trade agreements and increasingly colorful stories about his adventures in the Southern Territories. He'd found his own mate, a fierce beta who matched his intensity and seemed genuinely happy, and Serafina's memory, it had found peace. Ilara had commissioned a garden in the First Queen's honor, a place of beauty where anyone could come to remember loved ones lost. Alaric visited it sometimes, usually alone, and Ilara never questioned those moments. Some grief was private, sacred, and should be honored rather than healed away completely. "There you are." She turned to find Alaric approaching, looking exhausted but content. Serafina was finally asleep after a marathon storytelling session that had involved dragons, 5 costume changes, and a detailed negotiation about whether dessert counted as a vegetable if it had fruit in it. "Thinking about how far we've come?" he guessed, sliding his arms around her waist from behind. "Always." She leaned back against him. 3 years ago, I was invisible, worthless, alone. You were never worthless. The world just didn't know how to see you yet. And now I'm a queen, a mother, a mate to a king who's learned to smile again. She turned in his arms to face him. Do you ever regret it? Choosing me? All the complications that came with that choice? Never. His answer was immediate and absolute. You gave me back my life, Alara. You reminded me that love isn't a limited resource, that opening my heart again didn't betray what I felt before. It honored it, because Serafina wanted me to be happy. And through you, through our daughter, through the life we've built, I am. Good. She kissed him softly, because I have news. What kind of news? The kind that involves another tiny person joining our family in about 7 months. Alaric's eyes went wide. You're pregnant. Again. The healer confirmed it this morning. She smiled at his expression, shock and joy, and just a flicker of that old fear. And before you start spiraling into worry, remember, we've done this before. We know what we're facing. And this time, there are no assassins, no complications, just us, choosing to expand our family. He picked her up and spun her around, right there on the balcony, laughing with pure delight. When he set her down, he immediately dropped to his knees, pressing his ear to her still flat stomach. Hello in there, he said softly. This is your father. You're going to have the most wonderful mother, and a sister who will teach you everything about being stubborn and brave. And we already love you more than words can say. Alara ran her fingers through his hair, tears of happiness sliding down her cheeks. They stayed like that for a long moment, a king and queen, a mate and his beloved, 2 broken people who'd found wholeness in each other. Below them, the kingdom slept peacefully. Inside, their daughter dreamed of adventures yet to come. And above, the moon watched as it always had, bearing witness to love's triumph over loss. What do you think? Alaric asked, standing and pulling her close. A boy or a girl? Does it matter? Not even slightly. He kissed her, deep and tender. As long as they're healthy, as long as you're safe, that's all I care about. We will be. Both of us, all of us. She looked up at the stars. The goddess gave us a second chance, Alaric. Now she's giving us a third and a fourth, and however many more we choose to embrace. We're not defined by what we lost anymore. We're defined by what we've built. What we've built, he echoed. I like that. They stood together as night deepened. 2 souls who'd traveled through darkness to find light, who'd learned that love could bloom even in the coldest winter, who'd discovered that sometimes the greatest strength is allowing yourself to hope again. Inside the palace, little Serafina stirred in her sleep, reaching for the stuffed wolf that never left her side. In 7 months, she'd have a sibling. In the years to come, more joy and challenges and adventures than anyone could predict. But tonight, this perfect, crystalline moment was enough. More than enough. Everything. The Alpha King had buried his first mate beneath frozen ground and thought he'd buried his heart with her. But hearts, like seeds, sometimes need to be buried before they can grow again. And when they bloom twice as bright for having known darkness. Ilara and Alaric stayed on that balcony until dawn painted the sky, talking of the future, remembering the past, and living fully in the present. And if sometimes Alaric glanced toward the garden where Serafina's memorial stood, Ilara understood. Love doesn't replace love. It multiplies. It transforms. It endures. If your heart beat alongside ours, like, comment and subscribe, because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive.